Imagine a racist cop, someone who thinks they can push people around just because of the badge they wear, punches a black FBI agent. But here's the twist. She fights back, and not in the way anyone expected. What happens next will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about power, strength, and justice. Before we continue, let us know, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below, and let's dive right into it. It was a quiet, rainy night in the city when Sarah Walker's world changed forever. As a black woman in her 30s working as an FBI agent, Sarah had learned to expect the worst from the system. She'd fought her way through years of discrimination, proving herself at every turn. But this night, this mission, was going to be different. Sarah had no idea that the worst was yet to come. Officer Danny Thompson, a 45-year-old veteran cop, was everything Sarah hated about the system. His arrogant attitude, fueled by years of bias, made him believe he was above everyone else. He saw Sarah, a woman of color in law enforcement, as someone who didn't belong. He didn't like her, didn't respect her, and he certainly didn't think she had what it took to handle this case. The night was dark, the streets empty, and the air thick with tension. The two of them, from completely different worlds, were about to come face to face. And in that moment, the storm wasn't just outside, it was about to hit between them. Sarah Walker had been an FBI agent long enough to know that the road to justice wasn't smooth, but tonight felt different. This case, corruption within their own department, was bigger than anything she'd ever handled before. The only problem? She had to work with Officer Danny Thompson. Thompson wasn't just any cop, he was a veteran with decades of experience and an ego just as big. From the start, he made it clear he thought Sarah didn't belong. His dismissive attitude wasn't subtle. Every time she offered a solution, he'd cut her off, belittle her, and even mock her. He'd say things like, "You wouldn't understand," and "stick to what you're good at." It wasn't just irritating, it was designed to make her feel small. But Sarah had been through this before. She knew how to keep calm. She had to prove herself every day, not just to Thompson, but to a system that didn't always value her. Still, his constant undermining made it hard to stay focused. The more he tried to push her down, the more she realized he wasn't just a bad partner. He was part of the problem. The tension between them built with every passing hour. Thompson seemed to believe that just because he had more time on the job, he knew better. Sarah knew this wasn't just about one case. It was about exposing the cracks in the system, about showing him that being underestimated was not the same as being weak. Finally, the boiling point arrived. While reviewing evidence, Thompson, clearly frustrated, tried to intimidate Sarah with one of his usual jabs. This time, something inside Sarah snapped. She told him off, told him to stop treating her like she was inferior. His response? A shove. It wasn't much, but the intent was clear. He thought it would get her to back down, to show her place. But Sarah wasn't having it. Before she could react, Thompson threw a punch. The room went silent. Sarah staggered back, her cheek stinging. But something changed. The punch, instead of making her feel defeated, ignited a fire inside her. She wiped her lip, stared him down, and stood taller than before. Thompson was stunned. He expected fear. What he got was a woman who refused to let him, or anyone, dictate her worth. Sarah didn't just fight back. She fought for something much bigger than herself. Her resolve was undeniable. Every step, every move she made, sent a message louder than any words could. Thompson, still reeling, tried again. This time, Sarah was ready. She wasn't just defending herself physically, she was taking back control. Each movement, more confident than the last, showed Thompson that this wasn't a battle he could win by force. Sarah wasn't just surviving, she was rewriting the rules. The tension between Sarah and Thompson was palpable, and it was clear that tonight would change everything. Thompson had been pushing Sarah's buttons for far too long, but this time, it wasn't going to work. He might have thought that years of experience would intimidate her, but Sarah was done playing his game. She wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. Thompson's usual arrogance was faltering. He saw the determination in Sarah's eyes, and it scared him more than he'd like to admit. The more he tried to belittle her, the stronger she became. Sarah wasn't just standing up for herself. She was fighting to expose the truth. And that was something Thompson could never handle. His mind raced as he tried to control the situation, but it was slipping through his fingers. "You think you can take me down?" Thompson growled, trying to regain his composure, but Sarah's response was cold and clear. "I'm not here to take you down. I'm here to show the world who you really are." It hit Thompson hard. It wasn't just a physical fight anymore. It was about everything he stood for. Sarah wasn't just challenging his authority. She was revealing the cracks in the system he'd spent his entire career hiding behind. And deep down, he knew it. He wasn't invincible, no matter how hard he tried to convince himself. Sarah wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had been silenced. As Thompson took another step toward her, Sarah remained unshaken. She wasn't afraid anymore. "You can't intimidate me," she said, her voice steady. "The truth is stronger than any threat you can make." Thompson faltered. For a brief moment he realized he couldn't control the narrative anymore. Sarah had already shifted the balance of power. No amount of insults, no amount of bullying could take away her resolve. And Thompson knew that. For the first time, he didn't have the upper hand. His confidence wavered, and Sarah's strength only grew. He tried to regain his footing, but the truth was catching up to him faster than he could handle. "You're out of your league," Thompson muttered, trying to salvage his pride. But Sarah wasn't listening. She was focused. "No, Thompson. You're the one who's out of your league. The truth is what matters, not your badge or your lies." Thompson couldn't respond. His arrogance, his pride, all the things he'd built his life on were crumbling right in front of him. Sarah wasn't just winning a fight, she was exposing everything he had hidden for years. And now there was no going back. The room fell into an eerie silence. Sarah stood tall, the weight of everything she had been fighting for resting on her shoulders. She wasn't just taking down a racist cop, she was making a statement that would reverberate long after this moment. Thompson knew it, too. He could feel it. The system was no longer protecting him, and he was powerless to stop it. "I think you've already lost," Sarah said, her words cutting through the tension. Thompson's face twisted, a mix of anger and disbelief. The reality was sinking in. The fight wasn't about who was stronger physically. It was about who was stronger in truth. And Sarah had won. Just when Sarah thought she had won, the game changed. Thompson, now on the defensive, was reeling. His mind was racing, trying to figure out how to escape the corner Sarah had backed him into. He'd spent his whole career believing that his badge gave him power over everyone else. But Sarah, with her calm strength and unyielding determination, had torn down that illusion in front of him. The system he had once trusted and manipulated was no longer protecting him. But just when it seemed like Sarah's victory was assured, she dropped the bombshell that would change everything. "Thompson," Sarah said, her voice steady, "you're not the one in control here. It's over." Thompson's face twisted with anger, but deep down he felt the weight of her words. He'd known this moment was coming, but he wasn't ready for it. Sarah wasn't just a woman who had stood up to him. She was about to take him down in a way that he couldn't fight back against. And the truth she was about to reveal would leave him in shock. "I've got the evidence," Sarah continued, her eyes locking onto his. "The case we've been working on? It's tied to you, to your corruption. All those years of abuse, those lies, they've caught up with you." Thompson froze. His chest tightened, and for the first time in a long while he was afraid. It wasn't just his career that was at risk now. It was his freedom. Sarah wasn't just a victim. She had gathered enough evidence to expose the truth. Thompson had been the one hiding behind the badge, pretending to be the good guy while exploiting the very system he was meant to protect. And now, it was all about to come crashing down. He tried to deny it at first, but Sarah's calm confidence only made the truth hit harder. The evidence she had, the files she had uncovered, there was no getting out of this. Thompson's pride, his arrogance, everything he'd built his life on, was falling apart before his eyes. Sarah had been playing a game he couldn't even see, and she had won. As the reality of the situation sunk in, Thompson's face turned pale. He had always thought he was untouchable, but Sarah had turned the tables in a way he hadn't expected. And now, the truth was out, and there was no escaping it. For a moment, he didn't speak. The room was filled with a heavy silence, the kind of silence that comes when everything has changed. The man who had tried to break Sarah had just been exposed for the fraud he was. And Sarah? She stood there, resolute, knowing that this moment would change everything. She wasn't just taking down a corrupt cop, she was taking down the system that had allowed men like Thompson to thrive for so long. Thompson, still trying to hold on to some shred of control, attempted to threaten her. But Sarah wasn't scared anymore. She had what she needed. She had the truth on her side. "You can try to fight it all you want," she said, "but this is bigger than you now. This isn't about you or me. It's about making sure no one else ever has to go through what you've put people through." Sarah's words hit Thompson harder than any punch ever could. He knew it was over. There was no way to spin this, no way to bury the truth. The walls were closing in, and it was all because of Sarah's determination to do what was right. No matter the cost. For Sarah, this wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about making Thompson pay. It was about setting a precedent, about making sure this kind of abuse of power never happened again. She wasn't just exposing Thompson. She was exposing a system that needed to change. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a sense of peace. The fight wasn't over, but she had taken the first step toward winning it. The truth was out. Thompson had been exposed for the corrupt cop he was, and there was no going back. For Sarah, the weight of the moment wasn't lost on her. She had just brought down one of the most dangerous figures in the department. But it wasn't just about that. It wasn't about revenge. It was about something much bigger. This was about setting things right. This was about justice for every person who'd been pushed aside, ignored, or mistreated by the system. Thompson, now broken and defeated, tried to process everything that had just happened. He had always thought he was untouchable. For years, he'd been able to hide behind his badge and his power. But now, everything was unraveling. The man who once controlled the situation was now helpless, unable to do anything but watch as his career, his reputation, and his freedom slipped away. Sarah had done what no one had been able to do. She had exposed the truth, and now, he was the one who had to face the consequences. But Sarah knew the fight wasn't over. She had won this battle, but there were still many more to come. As she looked at Thompson, she realized that the work she had done wasn't just about bringing him down. It was about challenging the system, forcing it to confront its own flaws. She had shown that change was possible, that even in a broken system, a single person could make a difference. But she also knew that one victory wasn't enough to bring about the full change that was needed. She couldn't stop now. The truth about Thompson's actions would echo throughout the department. It would serve as a warning to others, a reminder that no one was above accountability. But Sarah also knew that real change wouldn't come easily. The system was built to protect the people who had abused their power for so long, and it would take more than one person to tear it down. But Sarah had shown the way. She had proven that standing up for what's right was worth the fight, no matter how tough it got. As the dust settled, Sarah thought about everything she had been through, the years of doubt, the constant fight to be seen as equal, the times she had been told she wasn't good enough. She had heard it all, but none of it mattered anymore, because now She had something that no one could take away from her: the truth. And with that truth, she had the power to change things, to make sure the people who were supposed to protect others didn't get away with breaking the law. Thompson, now facing the consequences of his actions, had no choice but to reflect on everything he had done. He had spent his whole career thinking he was in control, that his position allowed him to make decisions without facing the consequences. But now, he had to face reality. For all his years of power and manipulation, he was no longer the one in control. It was Sarah who had the power now, and it was her courage, her strength, and her commitment to justice that had brought everything down. For Sarah, the battle was just beginning. She knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. The corruption she had uncovered was just the tip of the iceberg. But she also knew she couldn't stop. This victory was just the start of something bigger, something that could change the way the system worked forever. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been silenced, for everyone who had ever been told they didn't matter. As she walked away from that moment, she felt a sense of pride, knowing that she had done what others had only dreamed of. But she also knew this was only the beginning. There was still so much more to do, and she wasn't going to stop until the job was done. She was ready for whatever came next, because when you stand up for what's right, you don't stop until the job is finished. Sarah had done what no one expected. She had exposed the corruption that had been hidden for years. Thompson, the man who thought he could control everything, was now facing the consequences of his own actions. But Sarah knew this wasn't just a personal victory, it was a turning point. This was about showing the world that the system couldn't protect the bad guys forever. As Sarah looked back at everything she'd just uncovered, she realized the fight wasn't over. This was just the beginning. She had done what many thought was impossible, but there were still so many stories left, untold. This was about more than just bringing one man down. It was about changing the system for good. It was about making sure no one else would have to face what she had gone through. But here's the big question. Who else is willing to stand up? Who else is ready to take on a system built to push people down? Can one person really change the world? I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a challenge where you had to fight for what's right, even when it seemed like no one was on your side? Drop a comment below and tell us your story. Your voice matters, and your experience can inspire others to take action. And hey, if you believe the truth is stronger than fear, don't forget to hit that like button, share this with your friends, and subscribe. We've got more stories coming your way, stories that will challenge everything you thought you knew about justice and fighting for what's right. Together, we can make a real difference. Comment below, and let's keep this conversation going. Your thoughts could change someone's life.